people with Parkinson's have much more control over their movements than they might think. Understanding the role of dopamine and the concept of intent can help people with Parkinson's live better lives. My name is Samantha Elandary. I am the founder of Parkinson Voice Project. I am thrilled that you have clicked on this video. And now let's begin learning about Parkinson's. There are four main symptoms to Parkinson's. They are resting tremor, slowness of movement, impaired balance, and rigidity. There are many other symptoms of Parkinson's, but these are the four main symptoms. If you have Parkinson's or you know somebody with Parkinson's, you might be surprised that weakness is not one of the main symptoms. Let me explain. Parkinson's is characterized by smaller movements, smaller walking, smaller writing, and even a smaller voice. Parkinson's does not attack muscles and make them weaker. Muscles become weak in Parkinson's because they're not being used to their full capacity. For example, if I were to walk and take very tiny steps, my leg muscles would become weaker. Again, not because Parkinson's is making them weaker, but because I am not using them to their full capacity. Now we're going to talk about how Parkinson's is diagnosed. When somebody goes to the neurologist, they will take a thorough case history. They will conduct a neurological exam, and that usually consists of doing some tests like touching your nose with your finger, moving your hands up and down like this, walking down a hallway, or getting up out of a chair. Now, when the neurologist is watching you during this neurological exam, he is looking for two of the four main symptoms: resting tremor, slowness of movement, impaired balance, or rigidity and stiffness. A neurologist might order some tests like a CT scan, MRI scan, or blood test, but those tests are not to diagnose Parkinson's. The only way to truly diagnose Parkinson's is through an autopsy. Otherwise, it is done through the clinical symptoms or looking for 2 out of 4 of those cardinal symptoms. If a person starts on the Parkinson's medications and those specific symptoms are improved or less pronounced, then the person is usually diagnosed with Parkinson's. There is a test called a DAT scan. A DAT scan is an imaging technology that measures the levels of dopamine in the brain. By the time of diagnosis, people with Parkinson's have lost an estimated 60 to 80% of their dopamine-producing cells. Let's talk about what causes Parkinson's. Parkinson's is caused when neurons that produce a chemical called dopamine die or become impaired. Researchers don't know exactly what causes the loss of dopamine, but it is suspected that it is a combination of genetics and environmental factors like pesticides. Now I want to talk about the role of dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that facilitates the planning and controlling of automatic muscle movements. This is so important for everybody with Parkinson's to understand. Let me say it again. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that facilitates the planning and the controlling of automatic muscle movements. There are so many movements that we do throughout the day that are automatic. We take them for granted, but without enough dopamine, automatic movements are disrupted. Let me give you some examples of automatic movements: walking, talking, swallowing, getting up out of a chair, putting on your seatbelt. There are so many things that we do throughout the day that we do without conscious effort. We do automatically. But these movements are highly dependent on dopamine. Somebody without Parkinson's can walk down the street, talk to a friend, eat an ice cream cone, all at the same time without really thinking about their walking or their talking or how they're eating their ice cream cone. All those movements are automatic. But with Parkinson's, people are struggling to produce these automatic movements because they are highly dependent on dopamine. Now, don't worry, I'm going to tell you what you can do about it. But first, I want you to understand that part. Speech is a highly automatic function. I am a speech language pathologist. Parkinson Voice Project is a nonprofit organization solely dedicated to helping people with Parkinson's regain and retain their speech. Talking is highly automatic. It's actually a miracle that we can talk. But I want to give you a couple examples of the speech and how it is automatic. Humans normally regulate their volume automatically. We don't think about it. For example, if I were to walk into a noisy restaurant, I would elevate my volume to an appropriate level so that people could hear me in that noisy environment. At the same time, if I were to go into a quiet environment, if I were to go into a library or into a church, I would automatically lower my volume to an appropriate level, but I probably could still be heard if I whispered over to my friend. But people with Parkinson's have a very difficult time regulating their volume. Sometimes they're speaking and they think they're loud enough, but they're not. Or sometimes they're trying to speak softer, but it's actually too loud. So that's just one example of how speech is an automatic behavior. Something that I find really interesting, and I hope that you will too, is that humans normally take the amount of breath we need for the words that we're about to speak. Now, think about that for a moment. Humans normally take the appropriate amount of breath we need for the words that we are about to speak. For example, if I am taking a walk in the evening and I see my neighbor and I say, "Hi," I don't have to tell myself, "Samantha, you only need to take a tiny breath because you're only going to say one word." At the same time, when I'm giving this presentation, some of my sentences are really long, but I don't have to tell myself, "Samantha, you're about to say a really long sentence. Make sure you take a really deep breath." But with Parkinson's, what's happening? People are trailing off at the end of their sentences. They're running out of air before they get to the end because speech is an automatic function. It's an automatic behavior, and automatic movements or behaviors are highly dependent on dopamine, and people with Parkinson's do not have enough dopamine. I want you to know that speech is a very serious issue for people with Parkinson's. In fact, 90% of people with Parkinson's will struggle with a speech disorder. Some of the early signs of a speech disorder are a softer voice, a voice that sounds kind of rough or gravelly, trailing off at the end of the sentences, flat intonation or a monotone voice, a voice that doesn't have as much expression as it used to, frequent throat clearing, and inconsistent production of the voice. Sometimes people with Parkinson's say, "I woke up in the morning and my voice sounded just fine, but later on in the afternoon, it didn't sound so good." So inconsistent speech production. Something that I want you to understand is that the muscles that we use for speaking are the same muscles that we use for swallowing. A lot of people don't realize that, especially people that are retired. They might say, well, I don't use my voice as much as I used to. I don't talk on the phone as much. I'm not giving presentations, so I'm not so concerned about it. But I urge you that if you have noticed any changes at all with your speech or your voice, or perhaps your spouse or a family member has noticed a change in your speech or voice, go ahead and have a speak out evaluation. And this is so important because the muscles we use for speaking are the muscles we use for swallowing. And swallowing disorders can be treated, just like speech disorders, if we catch them quickly enough. Some of the symptoms of a swallowing disorder are a lot of people complain of drooling or not being able to control their saliva as much as they used to. Normally, humans are swallowing their saliva throughout the day automatically. But because automatic movements are highly dependent on dopamine, people with Parkinson's are not swallowing automatically, and so the saliva tends to accumulate in the mouth. And during speech therapy, we help you with that. We help you get the muscles stronger, but also help you to become more aware so that you will intentionally swallow more often. Some other signs of a swallowing disorder related to Parkinson's is coughing while eating or drinking, kind of a wet vocal quality, feeling like food or pills are getting stuck in your throat, and unexplained weight loss. Now, I've told you a lot of information, and I bet you're ready to hear some good news. Humans have two motor systems. We've talked a lot about the automatic motor system, but I want you to know humans have two motor systems, the automatic motor system and the intentional motor system. Here's a diagram of both motor systems. I want you to know that impulses start at the top at the cortex and travel down to the brainstem. In the automatic motor system and the intentional motor system, the impulses start and end at the same place, but it is how they reach their destination that makes them different. And it is very important that you understand this. This explanation, when you understand about the intentional motor system, it is going to help you realize that you have so much more control over your movements than you may have thought. Look at the diagram on the left, the automatic motor system. Do you see the short green lines? In the automatic motor system, as the impulses are traveling down, they are stopping to communicate to various structures within the brain. When they get to the substantia nigra, those little purple images, that is where dopamine is supposed to be. But since by the time of diagnosis, people have already lost 60 to 80% of their dopamine producing cells, when the impulses get to the substantia nigra, they're having trouble making it the rest of the way down. Think about people with Parkinson's who may be walking, and their walking may not look as smooth as someone without Parkinson's. It's because of the automatic motor system and the impulses traveling down, and when they get to the area of dopamine, they're struggling to make it the rest of the way down. Now look at the diagram on the right, the intentional motor system. Notice the blue lines that are going straight down. These impulses do not stop to communicate to various structures within the brain. They almost bypass the substantia nigra where dopamine is produced. And so the intentional motor system is not as dependent on dopamine as the automatic system. So what this means is that when people with Parkinson's use intent, when they are deliberate, when they focus, when they concentrate, when they are purposeful, they can walk better, talk better, swallow better, get out of a chair better, write better, put their seatbelt better. Intent is the key to managing Parkinson's. And that's the main premise of the Speak Out Therapy program, which I will tell you about in just a little bit. In fact, I'm going to show you a video that really demonstrates the difference between automatic speech and intentional speech. In this video, you are going to see 4 people with Parkinson's who receive 12 Speak Out therapy sessions each.
You're trying to make many efforts, many attempts to get somebody else to give up on me. And I was much stronger, much clearer. The words are more concise. I sound like a human being.
Count from 1 to 15.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
My wife has noticed it more than I, but apparently I've lost a lot of oomph in my voice.
It's me talking, and it's me, only as part of this process did I learn that I had relinquished control of my voice and relinquished a significant part of my life, which is being sociable and social, and now I think I'm back in charge, or I'm on my way to being back in charge.
It's much softer and more difficult to speak. I speak louder, clearer, and with intent.
Parkinson Voice Project's Speak Out Therapy program strengthens the muscles that we use for speaking and swallowing, and teaches people with Parkinson's how to convert speech from an automatic function to an intentional act. And what I'm telling you about intent applies to everything that you do with Parkinson's. After this video, perhaps you'll visit Parkinson Voice Project's website. I want you to go to our website and learn more about the Speak Out Therapy program. We depict our program in a diagram called the Circle of Intent. And I'm not going to go into it in great detail, but what I want you to know is that the treatment model that we use for Parkinson Voice Project's program is what you should be doing for physical therapy, where you start out with an evaluation. You get the tools you need to do your exercises. You learn more about the problem, like when you're watching this video. You do one-on-one therapy with a speech-language pathologist for Speak Out therapy, or a physical therapist for your physical therapy. And then after you finish one-on-one therapy, you go on and you participate in groups. For our program, we have Speak Out therapy groups. For physical therapy, you may have boxing groups or dancing groups or exercise classes. And then every 6 months, you want to go back to your therapist. For Speak Out therapy, you'll go to your speech-language pathologist. For physical therapy, you'll go back to your physical therapist. And you notice that wrapped around this circle is daily home practice. Exercise might be the most important thing for people with Parkinson's, and it is important that you set a routine for all of your therapies to do the exercises every single day. Our program is depicted in this circle because it never ends. Now I want to talk about 2 challenges, 2 barriers to treatment. It's very important that people with Parkinson's understand these, and especially that your families and your friends understand this so that they can help you and support you in the right way. The first challenge is that with Parkinson's, there is a sensory deficit. And what this means is that the movements with Parkinson's don't feel to the person with Parkinson's like they really are. In terms of the voice, somebody with Parkinson's might be talking and they think that their volume is loud enough, and they're surprised when people are leaning in or asking them to repeat. It's not unusual for somebody with Parkinson's to tell their spouse, I don't have a problem, it's your hearing that is the problem. Well, that's the sensory deficit. If somebody does not recognize that they have a problem, then they're not going to seek treatment. And that is a big problem with Parkinson's because early intervention is critical. When people come to us at Parkinson Voice Project, when their speech is a mild problem, it is so easy to remediate. But when they wait too long, when they're having to repeat 4 or 5 times, or they're really struggling to be understood, it's more challenging. You can still make progress, but it is more challenging than if you had sought out treatment when it was a small problem. And so I encourage you to really pay attention to the clues. Pay attention if somebody's asking you to repeat or you notice anything, and go have a speak out evaluation. Let's talk about the second challenge. Parkinson's is a movement disorder. It is battled by moving. I want you to think about that. Parkinson's is a movement disorder that is battled by moving. Dopamine, besides impacting our automatic movements, also impacts our motivation and our drive. People with Parkinson's really struggle with their motivation. They know that they do better when they're exercising. They feel better. Their muscles are not as stiff. Their walking is better. Their voice sounds great. And yet they're not motivated to do the exercises. Here are some ways to increase your motivation. These are just a few ideas that you can use for your physical strength and for your speech. First of all, you want to seek out physical therapy and speech therapy with a Parkinson's expert. Keep in mind that, for example, speech language pathologist, when I went to graduate school, I was trained to treat children all the way up to the elderly, all different disorders. But for the past 25 years, I've only worked with individuals with Parkinson's. I want you to seek out a speech language pathologist and a physical therapist that has specialized training in treating Parkinson's. It's very different from other disorders. I want you to set a daily routine, put it on your calendar. You're going to need about an hour, maybe not quite an hour. You will need 15 to 20 minutes to exercise your speech and your swallowing, and then another 20 or 30 minutes to exercise your body. It will make such a big difference, and it is critical that you do this every single day. Some ways to motivate you are perhaps to join a gym or to hire a trainer if you're able to do that. If you've paid for the trainer, you bet that you will probably show up to that exercise class. You can exercise with a friend or with a group of people. This is also where family and friends, adult children can get involved. It would be wonderful if adult children, if they live in town, would come over once a week and go through the Parkinson's exercises, both the physical and the speech. I have a number of my patients who are getting on a Zoom call with their adult children or their grandchildren and doing the speak out exercises. At Parkinson Voice Project, we host online speak out home practice sessions 5 days a week live, and we have recordings on our website. Please visit our website. Start practicing with me today or tomorrow. And as part of our program, we have speak out therapy groups. I want to thank you for watching this video, and we are going to end the video with Luke Michael, who is a young onset person with Parkinson's. You are going to see what his voice was like before speak out therapy, and then you will see him 5 years later. He truly does live with intent, which is what we want all of you to do. And after this video, go visit our website, Parkinson Voice project.org. Thank you so much.
Tell me your full name.
Luke Michael,
And when were you diagnosed with Parkinson's disease?
6 years ago.
Have you noticed a change in your voice or speech?
Yeah,
What have you noticed?
my voice has almost disappeared.
Speak out to me is a number of things. It is an exercise regime that I do for my voice every single day without fail, which keeps my voice strong and it enables me to communicate well.